The photograph in my cargo pocket had taken a beating, sand from 3 deployments, sweat stains from too many patrols, and now a spiderweb of cracks across Bridget's smile. I smoothed it against my knee while the radio crackled with routine traffic from the wire. FOB endurance at 0400 was all shadows and diesel fumes, the kind of pre-dawn quiet that made you think too much. My phone buzzed. Bridget, bad reception at Mom's. Kids miss you. Home Sunday. I stared at the message. Mom lived in Richmond. Perfect cell coverage, fiber internet, the works. I'd installed her Wi-Fi myself during my last leave. The lie sat there on my screen like a live grenade. Donovan, you copy? I keyed the radio. Copy. Control. Package inbound, your show. The convoy lights cut through the darkness, headlamps bobbing like fireflies. I pocketed the photo and focused on the job. Asset protection, intelligence gathering, the same skills that had kept me breathing for 12 years in the Army. Skills I'd apparently need at home now, too. By 0600, the debriefing was done, and I was alone in the comm tent with my laptop. The hidden camera app I'd installed in our bedroom 6 months ago, just a precaution after Bridget started working late book clubs and mysterious pharma conferences, showed 17 new notifications. I clicked play on the most recent file. Bridget was there, all right. But not alone. A man I'd never seen before sat on our bed, my side of the bed, drinking from the Waterford crystal wine glasses we'd gotten as wedding gifts. His jacket hung on the back of my reading chair like he owned the place. I watched them talk, laugh, touch. Watched him pour more wine into those glasses that had sat untouched in our china cabinet for 8 years. Watched my wife pull him toward pillows that still smelled like my aftershave. The timestamp read 2,347 hours. Less than 2 hours after she'd texted about bad reception. I didn't break anything. Didn't shout or punch the desk. I did what Staff Sergeant Roy Donovan always did. I gathered intelligence. I recorded everything. I started building a file. The tent flap rustled behind me. Lewis Cade, my commo partner for 3 deployments, poked his head in with 2 cups of mess hall coffee. You look like hell, brother. Rough night. I closed the laptop. Family stuff? Could say that. I took the coffee, thinking about the man in my bedroom, the wine glasses, the jacket draped like a flag of conquest. Lewis, you ever have to hunt something close to home? He raised an eyebrow. How close? Inside the wire. Jesus. He sat down, suddenly serious. What do you need? Before I could answer, my CO appeared in the doorway. Colonel Barrett looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came with command responsibility and too little sleep. Donovan, caught you. Emergency leave came through if you want it. Family situation back home? I could have said yes. Could have caught the next transport to Frankfurt, then home to Virginia, confronted everything head-on like some jealous husband. Instead, I looked at the encrypted folder on my desktop labeled Phase 1 and shook my head. Negative, sir. I need to prepare first. Barrett frowned. Prepare for what? For war, sir. Just a different kind than usual. By dawn, I had 17 terabytes of metadata and a pattern that made my blood run cold. Hotel charges on Bridget's credit card during my training rotations. Gym check-ins when she claimed to be at sales meetings. A babysitter paid cash for evenings when she was supposedly at book club. But Perry Wexler himself was the real problem. I ran his employment history through every database I had access to. The timeline had gaps. His addresses didn't match utility records. His references led to disconnected numbers. Then I found the financial trail. Lewis slid coffee across the table. Find something? Perry Wexler doesn't exist, I said. Look at these offshore deposits. Every major one happens within 48 hours of my security clearance upgrades. Lewis whistled low. That's not cheating, Roy. No, it's not. I sent an encrypted message to Barrett. Require immediate consultation, possible counterintelligence threat. 20 minutes later, Barrett was reviewing my 3-inch dossier. Jesus Christ, Donovan. How long has this been going on? 18 months, near as I can tell. And the financial connection to your clearance timeline? Every deposit aligns within 72 hours of classified briefings I attended. Either it's the most incredible coincidence in military history, or my wife's boyfriend is a foreign asset. Barrett closed the folder. What do you need? Permission to run a full background investigation. And sir, I need to know if there are others. Done. But this stays between us until we know more. Your family situation just became a matter of national security. That night, I called home. Bridget sounded breathless. Oh, they're wonderful. Max has been working on his curveball with Perry. He asks lots of questions about your work, actually. Says he's fascinated by military life. What kind of questions? When you'll be back, what you do over there, whether you travel much. Normal stuff. Normal for an intelligence handler, maybe. My phone buzzed with Barrett's encrypted message. Wexler confirmed as Pavel Resnick, known operative. Maintain operational security. Phase 2, authorized. My wife's lover wasn't just a foreign asset. He was a named operative with an active file. And I was going to bring him down using the one arena where he thought he was safe. My own family. The flight from Germany took 8 hours. I spent every minute planning. Bridget met me at arrivals with the kids. Max had grown another inch. Lily had lost a tooth. They clung to me like I'd been gone a year. Daddy! Mr. Perry taught me to play chess. Lily wrapped her arms around my leg. Did he now? I caught Bridget's quick glance. The drive home was surface chatter, school, soccer, neighborhood gossip. Normal family stuff, except for Bridget's phone checking and the unfamiliar cologne in the minivan. Walking through my front door felt like entering enemy territory. Perry's jacket hung on my reading chair. Perry stopped by earlier, Bridget said quickly. He helped fix the shower head. I forgot he left his coat. Thoughtful. I kept my voice level. Kids, get cleaned up for dinner. I waited until their doors closed upstairs before facing my wife. So, Perry? She busied herself cooking, not meeting my eyes. What about him? Seems like he's spending a lot of time here. He's a friend, Roy. You know how lonely it gets when you're deployed. Audi keys sat on the kitchen island. Expensive ones. Nice car. His lease just came through. I picked up the keys. Bridget, what's Perry's last name? She froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. What? His last name. You've mentioned him dozens of times, but never his full name. It's Wexler. Perry Wexler. Interesting, because Perry Wexler doesn't exist, but Pavel Resnick does. The spoon clattered to the floor. I don't know what you're talking about, she whispered. Don't you? I showed her a hotel photo on my phone. Room 412, 3 weeks ago. Paid for by shell companies linked to your investment portfolio. Her face went white. Roy, I can explain. The back door opened. Pavel walked into my kitchen like he belonged there. Evening, Roy. Welcome back. I studied him with fresh eyes, mid-30s, athletic, expensive clothes that whispered intelligence training. Pavel, I said quietly. His smile flickered. A tell. I'm sorry? Your name? It's Pavel Resnick, isn't it? He glanced at Bridget. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. That's quite an accusation, he said calmly. It's quite a file. Facial recognition, financial records, communication intercepts. Upstairs, Max's voice. Mom, where's my glove? Mr. Perry said we could practice more. All three of us looked at the ceiling. My son, excited to play with the man stealing secrets from his father. We'll have a civilized conversation, I said, barely above a whisper, and then you'll be gone. Max! Lily, get your shoes. We're going for ice cream. As they thundered downstairs, I sent Barrett a text. Confirm Resnick. Phase 2. Active. The response came immediately. Copy. Standing by. Pavel watched me with the flat stare of a professional operative. He knew exactly what was coming next. Good. The divorce papers arrived by courier at 0800 hours, delivered to FOB Endurance with bureaucratic efficiency. Bridget was asking for the house, full custody of the children, and 70% of my military pension. I read through all 47 pages while drinking mess hall coffee and listening to Lewis curse steadily under his breath. 70%, he said, looking over my shoulder. That's not a divorce settlement, that's a complete asset transfer. It's bait, I said, setting the papers aside. She's counting on me to fight this emotionally. Get angry, make mistakes, play into their hands. What are you going to do? I pulled out my encrypted satellite phone. Fight it professionally. 20 minutes later, I was connected to retired Colonel Damon Franklin, formerly Judge Advocate General's Corps, currently running a private practice in Alexandria that specialized in military divorces with security. Implications. Roy Donovan, Franklin said when he came on the line. Barrett filled me in. This is one hell of a situation you've got. Can we win? In court? Maybe, but there are rules about what we can and can't introduce as evidence. Your intelligence file on this Resnick character, that's classified material. We can't just dump it on a family court judge. What can we use? Financial discrepancies, timeline inconsistencies, basic background verification stuff. Enough to raise questions, maybe, but probably not enough to prove espionage. I looked out across the compound, where soldiers were going through their morning routines. PT, chow, equipment maintenance. Normal military life, built on discipline and trust and clear chains of command. Colonel Franklin, what if I told you this wasn't just about winning a custody case? I'd ask what you had in mind. What if we used the family court as operational theater? Drew the targets into a controlled environment where other assets could take action? There was a long pause. Roy, that would be extremely dangerous. For you, for the children, for everyone involved. More dangerous than letting a foreign intelligence network continue to operate against military families? Another pause. What kind of timeline are we talking about? Barrett's team needs 6 weeks to build their case and coordinate with the FBI. I need to keep Pavel Resnick convinced that he's winning, that the divorce is proceeding normally, and that I'm just a jealous husband trying to save his marriage. And if something goes wrong? If he gets spooked and runs? I thought about Max asking endless questions about my work, about Lily learning chess from a man who traded in secrets, about Bridget crying in our kitchen while her handler stood between me and the exits. Then we lose more than just a case, Colonel. We lose everything. Franklin agreed to take the case, with the understanding that he'd be coordinating with federal investigators and military intelligence throughout the process. Within 48 hours, I had a legal strategy that looked like a desperate husband's last stand, but functioned as an operational plan. Meanwhile, Barrett's team was building their own case. The investigation had expanded beyond just Pavel Resnick. Financial forensics had identified at least 12 other military families with similar patterns of unexplained investment returns and mysterious new friends. Communication intercepts suggested a broader network targeting Naval Station Norfolk, Fort Belvoir, and the Pentagon itself. Donovan, Barrett called me into his office 3 days later. We've got the handler. He showed me surveillance photos of a woman in her 50s, well-dressed, professional. Someone you'd never notice in a crowded restaurant or airport terminal. Katerina Volkov, cultural attaché at the Russian embassy, but that's just cover. She's been running assets up and down the eastern seaboard for at least 5 years. Resnick reports directly to her. Any connection to Bridget? That's where it gets interesting. He pulled up another photo. Bridget at what looked like a pharmaceutical conference, shaking hands with Volkov next to a display booth for some medical device company. This was taken 14 months ago, 2 weeks before your first clearance upgrade. I stared at the image. My wife, smiling and professional, making contact with a Russian intelligence officer at a fake business conference. Either she was a willing participant in espionage, or she'd been recruited and developed without ever fully understanding what she was doing. Barrett, I need to know, is Bridget a target or an asset? Does it matter for the operation? It matters for what happens to her afterward. He closed the file. One thing at a time, Staff Sergeant. First we roll up the network. Then we sort out the collateral damage. That night, I called home. Bridget sounded strained when she answered. How are you holding up? I asked. It's hard, Roy. The lawyers, the paperwork, trying to explain to the kids why Daddy isn't coming home. Max keeps asking when you'll be back to play catch. Tell him soon, I said. Tell him Daddy's going to fix everything. Roy, her voice broke. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about all of this. I never meant for things to get so complicated. I know, I said, and meant it. Whatever else Bridget had done, whatever choices she'd made, she was still the mother of my children. Still the woman who'd married a young soldier and built a life with him. Still someone who deserved better than to be used as a weapon against her own family. After I hung up, I walked outside into the Afghan night and looked up at stars that seemed close enough to touch. In 3 weeks, I'd be sitting in a Virginia courtroom, watching federal agents arrest the man who'd been sleeping in my bed and playing catch with my son. But first, I had to survive the trap we were setting and make sure my children did too. The Fairfax County Courthouse looked like every other government building in Northern Virginia. Red brick, white columns, and the kind of institutional authority that made you want to straighten your tie. I wore my dress blue uniform with full decorations, against Franklin's advice. The optics are all wrong, he'd warned. You'll look like you're trying to intimidate the judge. Good, I'd replied. Maybe I am. Bridget sat at the plaintiff's table with her attorney, Veronica Slate, and enough paperwork to choke a tank. She looked expensive. New suit, professional haircut, the kind of presentation that whispered competence and reliability. Pavel sat behind her in the gallery, supportive boyfriend playing his role perfectly. Judge Patricia Holloway called the session to order at 9 a.m. sharp. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 50s, with the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that came from dealing with bitter divorces and child custody battles every day. This is the matter of Donovan versus Donovan, she announced. Petitioner seeks dissolution of marriage with division of assets and determination of child custody. Mr. Franklin, your client is present? Yes, Your Honor. Franklin gestured to me. Staff Sergeant Roy Donovan, United States Army. Miss Slate, you may proceed with your opening statement. Slate stood up like she was addressing a war crimes tribunal. Your Honor, this case is about a woman and her children who have been terrorized by a husband whose military training has made him paranoid, controlling, and potentially dangerous. Mrs. Donovan seeks only the safety and security that every American family deserves. She painted a picture of Bridget as the long-suffering military wife, dealing with a husband whose deployments had left him emotionally unstable and prone to wild conspiracy theories. She spoke of surveillance equipment installed in their home without Bridget's knowledge, of financial investigations conducted without legal authority, of accusations so bizarre they bordered on delusional. Staff Sergeant Donovan has accused my client's friend and colleague, Mr. Perry Wexler, of being some sort of foreign spy, Slate said, with the kind of tone reserved for discussing UFO abductions. This paranoid delusion has escalated to the point where Mrs. Donovan fears for her safety and that of her children. It was a good performance. If I didn't know better, I might have believed it myself. Franklin's opening was more restrained. Your Honor, Staff Sergeant Donovan is not here to contest the dissolution of his marriage. Sometimes relationships end, and that's unfortunate but understandable. He is here to protect his children from individuals who may not have their best interests at heart. Are you suggesting that Mrs. Donovan is an unfit mother? Judge Holloway asked. I'm suggesting that Mrs. Donovan may have been manipulated by people with ulterior motives, people who have used her relationship with my client to gain access to sensitive information and potentially compromise national security. Slate was on her feet immediately. Objection, Your Honor. This is exactly the kind of paranoid fantasy. Overruled, Judge Holloway said quietly. I'll hear what Mr. Franklin has to say. For the next 2 hours, I watched my life get dissected by lawyers and presented as evidence. Bank records, phone logs, travel itineraries, credit card statements. The judge examined each piece carefully, occasionally asking questions that suggested she was taking this more seriously than Slate had expected. Then came the testimony. Bridget took the stand first, describing 18 months of increasing paranoia and surveillance. She spoke of hidden cameras and financial investigations, of accusations and confrontations, of a husband who had become a stranger. Mrs. Donovan, Franklin said during cross-examination, can you explain these deposits into your investment account? He showed her printouts of bank transfers totaling nearly $200,000 over 18 months. Those are returns on investments Perry helped me make. Pharmaceutical stocks mostly. He has expertise in that area. And these investments were made with whose money? Mine. Money I'd saved from my job. Your job pays approximately $35,000 per year, correct? Yes. And your household expenses, including mortgage, utilities, and child care, total approximately $4,200 per month? Bridget's confidence flickered. Yes. So in a typical year, after taxes and expenses, you might have $3,000 in disposable income. Yet you invested $200,000. Perry explained it to me. Leverage, derivatives, complex financial instruments. Mrs. Donovan, do you understand what leverage means in financial terms? Perry handled the details. Franklin let that hang in the air for a moment before continuing. Mrs. Donovan, how long have you known Perry Wexler? 18 months. And in that time, how many of your mutual friends have met him? I don't understand. You've posted 47 photographs on social media showing you at various social gatherings over the past 18 months. Mr. Wexler appears in none of them. Why is that? Slade objected, but Judge Holloway allowed the question. Perry is private. He doesn't like being photographed. I see. And his employment with Meridian Biosystems. Have you ever visited his office? He works remotely mostly. Have you ever met any of his colleagues? No. Attended any company functions? Perry says they're very boring. Franklin nodded, sympathetically. Mrs. Donovan, in 18 months of dating this man, you've never met a single person who can confirm his identity, his employment, or even his existence outside of your relationship. Doesn't that strike you as unusual? That's when Bridget started crying. The judge called a recess. During the break, I saw Pavel in the hallway, speaking quietly into his phone. His body language was different, tense, alert. He was reporting to someone, and whatever he was hearing wasn't good news. When court resumed, Franklin asked the judge's permission to submit additional evidence. Your Honor, I have here a single-page document that I believe addresses many of the questions that have been raised in this proceeding. He handed copies to the judge, to Slate, and to the court clerk. I watched Judge Holloway's face as she read. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. Miss Slate, does your client wish to respond to this document? Slate was reading frantically, her face growing paler by the second. Your Honor, I need a moment to confer with my client. That's when the doors burst open. 6 men in federal agent windbreakers flooded into the courtroom, followed by 2 MPs in full-dress uniform. The lead agent flashed his badge at the judge. Your Honor, FBI, we have arrest warrants. Judge Holloway banged her gavel. Bailiff, secure the courtroom. No one leaves. The lead agent walked directly to Pavel, who had gone very still in the gallery. Pavel Sergeyevich Resnik, you are under arrest for espionage, conspiracy to commit espionage, and violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. They cuffed him right there in the courtroom, while Bridget screamed, and Judge Holloway maintained order with sharp banging of her gavel. Pavel never resisted, never looked surprised. He kept his eyes on me the entire time, as if trying to memorize my face. Your Honor, the FBI agent said, we also have a warrant for Katerina Volkov, and any materials related to this investigation that may be present in the courtroom. One of the other agents walked to Bridget, who was sobbing at the plaintiff's table. Mrs. Donovan, we're going to need you to come with us for questioning. Am I under arrest? She whispered. Not at this time. But we have a lot to discuss. Judge Holloway banged her gavel again. In light of these extraordinary circumstances, I'm issuing an emergency order for temporary custody of the minor children to be placed with their father, Staff Sergeant Donovan, pending further investigation. Court is adjourned. The media was already gathering outside. Someone had tipped them off, or maybe they just monitored police scanners for interesting stories. Either way, the steps of the Fairfax County Courthouse were about to become very crowded. Franklin put his hand on my shoulder as we watched the FBI agents escort Pavel and Bridget toward separate vehicles. Well, he said quietly, that went better than expected. I looked at my watch. 1,347 hours. 3 hours ago, I'd been fighting for custody of my children. Now I was watching my wife's handler get loaded into a federal transport vehicle, while news crews filmed everything for the evening broadcast. The trap had worked. The network was blown. Justice in its clinical federal form was being served. But as I walked down the courthouse steps toward my children, who were waiting in a secure location with victim services coordinators, all I could think about was the look in Bridget's eyes when they'd handcuffed the man she thought she loved. Some victories, I was learning, didn't feel much like winning. The safe house looked like every other suburban rental in Northern Virginia. Beige carpet, generic furniture, cable TV with premium channels. The kind of place where nothing memorable ever happened, which made it perfect for protecting witnesses and victims until the media circus moved on to the next story. Max and Lily had been there for 6 hours when I arrived. They were sitting on the couch with a victim services coordinator named Patricia Walsh, watching cartoons and eating takeout pizza like this was some kind of adventure. Daddy! Lily launched herself at me, wrapping her arms around my legs with the kind of desperate intensity that told me she understood more than anyone wanted to admit. Max was more reserved, studying my face with the kind of serious expression that belonged on someone much older. Dad, where's Mom? I sat down on the couch between them, trying to figure out how to explain that their mother was in federal custody without traumatizing them further. Mom is helping some important people with their work, I said finally. She's safe, but she's going to be busy for a while. Is she in trouble? Lily asked, still clinging to my arm. Grown-up trouble, I said. Nothing for you to worry about. But Max wasn't buying it. It's because of Mr. Perry, isn't it? He did something bad. Agent Walsh had been quiet until now, but she leaned forward with professional interest. Max, did Mr. Perry ever ask you questions about your dad's work? Max nodded slowly. He said he was curious about military stuff, asked if Dad ever brought work papers home, if he got phone calls at weird times, if he traveled places he couldn't talk about. Did you tell him things? Sometimes. Max's voice got very small. He gave me treats when I remembered stuff, said it was like a game. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my stomach. A game. Pavel Resnik had turned my son into an intelligence asset using candy and attention. Max, I said gently, you're not in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong. Mr. Perry is the adult, and adults are supposed to protect children, not trick them. But I told him stuff. About your phone calls, about when you came home upset from work, about that time you had to leave in the middle of the night for the emergency at the base. Lily looked between us with growing awareness. Daddy, is Max in trouble? Are we in trouble? No, sweetheart. Nobody is in trouble except the bad guys, and the bad guys are already caught. Agent Walsh was taking notes on everything Max said. Every detail would become part of the federal case against the network, evidence of how thoroughly they'd infiltrated military families and exploited the trust of children. "Agent Walsh," I said quietly, "can I have a moment alone with my kids?" She nodded and stepped outside, leaving us in the artificial quiet of the safe house. "Dad," Max said, "are you and Mom getting divorced?" There was no point in lying about something they'd figure out soon enough anyway. "Yes, buddy. Mom and I aren't going to be married anymore. Because of Mr. Perry? Because of a lot of things. But that doesn't change anything about how much we both love you and Lily." "Will we still live in our house?" Lily asked. "You'll live with me. Mom will visit when she can." What I didn't tell them was that those visits would be supervised by federal agents, at least until the investigation was complete. What I didn't tell them was that their mother might be facing charges herself, depending on what the FBI learned about her level of involvement. What I didn't tell them was that their entire understanding of the past 18 months, the fun times with Mr. Perry, the special attention, the grown-up conversations, had been a carefully orchestrated intelligence operation. Children, I was learning, were collateral damage in ways that had nothing to do with explosions or gunfire. That night, after Max and Lily had fallen asleep in the safe house bedroom they were sharing, Agent Walsh briefed me on the preliminary findings of the investigation. "Your wife received over $200,000 in payments disguised as investment returns," she said, showing me financial documents spread across the kitchen table. "The money came from shell companies controlled by Russian intelligence services. Was she a willing participant? That's still being determined. The payments started small, a few $100s here and there, explained as lucky stock picks. They gradually increased as her information became more valuable." "What kind of information?" Walsh pulled out a thick folder. "Your deployment schedules, security clearance updates, training rotations, assignment changes, details about base security procedures, personnel movements, operational timelines. Nothing individually compromising, but collectively. It builds a complete picture of military readiness and capabilities." "Exactly. And it wasn't just your family. We've identified 12 other households with similar patterns. Naval officers at Norfolk, Air Force personnel at Langley, contractors working Pentagon projects. The scope is massive." I stared at the documents, bank records, communication logs, surveillance photographs. A paper trail of betrayal that stretched across the entire military community. "What happens to Bridget?" "That depends on what she tells us in the next few days. If she cooperates fully, if she can help us understand the recruitment process and identify other targets, the prosecutors might be willing to work with her. And if she doesn't?" Walsh closed the folder. "Conspiracy charges carry a minimum of 10 years. I thought about my wife, sitting in a federal holding facility, probably terrified, probably still not fully understanding how completely she'd been manipulated. About Max asking questions that had seemed innocent, but fed directly into an intelligence assessment. About Lily learning chess moves from a man who collected secrets the way other people collected stamps. "Agent Walsh, I need to see her. That's not possible right now. She's in protective custody while we debrief her, and any contact with family members could compromise the investigation. She's the mother of my children. She's also a potential intelligence asset who may have committed federal crimes. I understand this is difficult, Staff Sergeant, but the national security implications take precedence over family considerations." The next morning, I woke up to find Max sitting at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the unmarked vehicles, parked across the street. "Dad, are we prisoners?" "We're protected," I said, pouring coffee from the pot that never seemed to empty. "There's a difference. It doesn't feel different." He was right, of course. Safety and imprisonment could look remarkably similar when you were 11 years old and nothing made sense anymore. "Max, Do you remember what I taught you about operational security? He nodded. Don't talk about classified stuff with people who don't have clearance. That's right. Well, now that extends to everything about our family situation. The people protecting us, where we're staying, what the agents have told us, all of that is classified now. Can you handle that responsibility? Max straightened up, sensing the importance of the moment. Yes, sir. Good man. Now how about we make Lily some pancakes and pretend this is just a really boring vacation? The custody hearing was scheduled for the following week. Franklin assured me it would be a formality. No judge in the country would award custody to a parent under federal investigation for espionage-related charges. But I knew the real hearing wouldn't happen in a courtroom. It would happen in my children's minds, over months and years, as they processed what their mother had done and why their family had been destroyed. That afternoon, Agent Walsh brought news that changed everything. Staff Sergeant, we've had a breakthrough. Resnick started talking. She handed me a transcript of his debriefing session. 20 pages of operational details, handler communications, and target assessments that read like a textbook on intelligence operations against military families. He's given us enough to roll up the entire network, Walsh continued. But there's something else. Something about your wife's level of involvement that you need to know. I read through the transcript carefully, looking for references to Bridget. What I found made me understand, finally, why Pavel Resnick had never looked surprised when they'd arrested him in the courtroom. He'd been expecting it, because Bridget had warned him. Page 14, Walsh said quietly. He describes a phone call from your wife on the morning you returned from deployment. She told him you'd confronted her about his identity, that you seemed to know more than you should have. I found the passage and read it twice. Bridget had called Pavel immediately after our kitchen confrontation, giving him enough warning to prepare for whatever came next. She'd known exactly who he was and what he was doing. She'd been a willing participant from the beginning. Staff Sergeant, Walsh said, I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. I set the transcript down and thought about my children sleeping upstairs, about the lies they'd been living with for 18 months, about the mother they thought they knew who had sold their fathers, secrets to foreign intelligence services. What happens now? I asked. Now we prepare for the custody hearing, and we make sure your children never have to find out just how completely their mother betrayed them. Some secrets, I was learning, were kept not to protect the guilty, but to protect the innocent from truths they were too young to carry. 3 months later, Barrett walked into my office with a folder that made my blood run cold. Donovan, we have a problem. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written in Bridget's handwriting and addressed to Pavel Resnick at his detention facility. These are from the approved correspondence program, Barrett explained. Your wife qualified as family member due to her cooperation. I picked up a letter at random. Updates about the children, school activities, neighborhood gossip, normal divorced couple communication. I don't see the problem. Run it through analysis software. 5 minutes later, I was staring at decoded operational intelligence. Tuesday parent-teacher conferences meant my evening meetings. Math references corresponded to assignment coordinates. Soccer practice indicated my patrol schedule. Jesus Christ, she's still working for them. It gets worse. Steganographic patterns in every letter for 3 months. She's been feeding Resnick intelligence about your new assignment, the task force, ongoing investigations. I read through more letters, watching innocent family updates transform into operational reports. Our son's science project contained base security details. Our daughter's dental appointment included my travel schedule. How is this possible? She's cooperating with prosecutors. She is cooperating. But she maintained connection to Resnick and his handlers. Your wife is a double agent. The words hung in the air like smoke. My wife was actively working against me, against her country, against the safety of our children. The letters contained targeting information about Max and Lily, Barrett continued. She's providing intelligence about your children's schedules and routines. That evening, I sat Max and Lily down and tried to explain why they wouldn't see their mother anymore. "But she's been getting better," Lily said. "Sometimes adults make choices that can't be fixed," I said carefully. Max asked the question I'd been dreading. "Dad, is Mom still doing bad things?" "Yes, buddy. She is. Even after she got caught?" "Even after she got caught." That night, I wrote to the federal prosecutor requesting termination of all contact and withdrawal of any plea agreement. My children deserved better than a mother who would trade their safety for operational advantage. Some betrayals were too complete to forgive. Some people became enemies of everything you were sworn to protect, including your own children. The knock came at 21:47 hours on a Tuesday night in November. I was reviewing Max's algebra homework when Agent Walsh appeared at my door with 2 federal agents. "Staff Sergeant Donovan, we need you to come with us." "What's the situation?" "Norfolk cell. We're moving tonight." 20 minutes later, I was in the back of an FBI Suburban heading north. Walsh briefed me during the drive: 12 military families, 6 civilian contractors, 2 congressional staffers. The network was bigger than we'd imagined. By 0400 hours, we'd arrested 6 targets and seized enough evidence to keep prosecutors busy for years. The handler, Volkov, was safely behind embassy walls with diplomatic immunity, but her network was blown. "What happens to the children?" I asked Walsh as we regrouped. "All these families we just broke up. All these kids who are about to learn their parents are traitors." Walsh was quiet. "They get new lives, new schools, witness protection for some, foster care for others. And they spend the rest of their lives knowing their parents chose ideology over family?" "Yes," she said simply. "They do." The drive back gave me time to think about choices and prices, about loyalty and betrayal, about the difference between ordinary family problems and matters of national security. When I got home, the kids were asleep in their beds. Max sprawled across his mattress, Lily curled up with her stuffed elephant. They looked peaceful, secure, protected. I sat at my kitchen table and wrote my final report. At the end, I added a personal note. "The most effective defense against intelligence operations targeting military families is teaching our people that their most sacred duty is to the innocent people who depend on them for protection. Sometimes that protection means going to war. Sometimes it means coming home. And sometimes it means building walls high enough that nothing can get through to hurt the people inside. Fortress holds." I sealed the report and set it next to a photograph of Max and Lily at the base playground, laughing and happy. Normal kids whose biggest worry was finishing homework. In the morning, I would deliver the report. In the afternoon, I would pick up my children from school and help with algebra and science projects. In the evening, we would have dinner and watch television like an ordinary family. But tonight, I sat in my kitchen listening to the quiet sounds of my children sleeping safely in their beds, protected by walls no enemy could breach, and love no betrayal could break. The war was over, the fortress held, and that was enough.